The other things we've been doing so that we do have the scalability are we provide editorial office administration both for our in-house journals and for quite a few of our independent journals. And more of the journals, as they're growing, need editorial office support. We were doing that in-house, we were doing that in London and Liverpool, but we were finding that the amount of submissions we needed to deal with and the sorts of volumes we're going to have to deal with were not sustainable in-house, and we have outsourced our journal editorial office to an organisation that is a very, very large organisation that deals with many thousands of journals and does this sort of work in Manila. And those of you who have dealt with them, I think, have found that their services are pretty good, and they're very scalable. They can continue to provide those services however many articles we throw at them. Similarly, we need to reorganise our editorial production and our production processes to make sure that we have the same sort of scalability, and we are in the process of doing that. So if you have seen over the last few weeks a little bit of slowness, or maybe a reasonable amount of slowness, in some of our post-acceptance phases, unfortunately that's because we have been going through this change, but what it means is that when we get through that change, which will be very soon, and in fact we're now getting faster and moving away from those backlogs, that will allow us to be much more scalable, and we will be much faster and much more efficient in those processes from now on. Not only that, we'll be able to take out quite a few of the annoying, repeat sorts of interactions that happen on our post-acceptance stage. We know that our process isn't as efficient as it might be. We're streamlining it, we're making it so that the number of interactions with the authors, the number of interactions with the editors at those stages are reduced, and that will reduce the time to publication as well. We're also investing very, very heavily in our journals platform. I know that those of you who were here last year, we talked to you about this already last year, and many of you have had your journals moved to our new platform. The reason for doing this is not only to provide us with a modern new design, which I think was much needed, and the ability to do more on our websites than we could do before, but also to have a much more flexible infrastructure underneath that, so that we can do things that we've never been able to do, that I know that a lot of editors have been asking for. So again, in the feedback I got from editors, one of the biggest complaints was not having customizable instructions for authors. We know this, and we need to provide that for you, so that your journals have instructions for authors which are much more relevant to your journals, and not a conglomeration of instructions which go across all of our journals. And we will be able to provide that with the new platform, so that is something that we will be providing this year. We are also working very, very hard on our editorial tools, and Matt's going to be talking a bit more about that later on. As soon as we finish moving all of our journals to the new platform, that is our next big project, so that our editorial tools are much more user-friendly, and I think Matt's actually got some stuff to show you what they're going to look like. In between, whilst we've been doing this, we have been improving the systems. We have made a lot of changes which have allowed things that people have wanted to happen. Some examples are that people can now put sort of more interesting information on their website. There's more blogs, more news, more things like that. We can do more with metrics on our website. We've been doing some stuff in the background as well, which allows us to service our membership much more easily. So an example of that is that we now have a different sort of membership, which is called shared support membership, which allows our institutions to choose to pay for half the agency or a proportion of the agency for their authors. That's very helpful because it allows more authors to publish with us. We needed to change our systems to allow those things to happen. So we've been doing a lot of stuff in the background which has made life much, much easier for our authors, for our referees, for our editors, and we continue to work very hard to do so. The other thing that I know that everybody is waiting for is the review database, and we have built it. We were about to roll it out, and we found it had some bugs. We want to make sure that what we roll out works. So it's in testing at the moment, and it will be with you shortly. But the last thing we want to do is give you a review database which makes your life harder rather than easier. So it's there, and it will be ready very shortly. I can't promise you exactly when because we need to make sure that it works before we give it to you, but very soon. So the other feedback I got when I asked for feedback was very much about improving our communications further. I think a lot of people acknowledge that having a journal development editor is a major step forward, and that they have enjoyed very much working with a journal development editor. We have various things, other things that we have done. I'll talk to you a bit more about what we're going to do on another slide, but the Editors' Conference is one way that we want to improve our communications. We have been improving our communications, and as I said earlier, we do need feedback from you on how to improve this further. Similarly, as a result of last year's conference, we implemented a LinkedIn group for the Editors-in-Chief, but we're not getting much interaction, so we'd like to talk to you about how that could work better, how you could use it better to interact with each other, because I think that was the purpose of it, and somehow it's not moving very much. And we also have a quarterly newsletter that we send to you, and we do want your feedback on how that can be made more informative, useful. What is it that you want from that? The other thing we do is we do monitor our authors twice. Every single author who submits an article and who publishes an article gets surveyed once after submission and once on publication. And they're asked their opinions on all sorts of parts of the process, and we get a very large number of those reviews back. And we closely monitor those responses, and we look very carefully at what they're suggesting, how we can improve things, and we do actually act on their suggestions. We also reply when they have a complaint. We reply to those complaints personally. Either I, one of my people, or Brian, and sometimes Matt actually get into conversation with those people who give us feedback, so that we are actually dealing with some of the questions that they have and the suggestions they have. But on our independent journals, generally author satisfaction has always been over 4. For speed of peer review, it's going up. It hit 4 at the end of last quarter, but it's going up again, and it's about 4.2. And the responsiveness of editorial staff, and I think that includes editors, it's 4.5, out of 5, which I think is pretty good. And so our authors remain reasonably happy. You can do this on a per journal basis, and you can see those responses for your journal. So if you want to, just make sure that you're talking to your journal development editor. We also work hard to keep our APCs competitive. It is a change in the way that people publish. You actually have to pay to publish, and there's always discussion about APCs. But our APCs, in terms of the large open access publishers, the large players in the market, ours are at the low end. And we work very hard to keep our APCs at the low end, because we know that it's important.